Question 1. Risk assessment procedures indicate that Bristol-Myers Squibb is exploring process optimization initiatives to enhance operational efficiency. Which of the following approaches best balances the pursuit of efficiency with the absolute priority of maintaining data integrity and regulatory compliance? Option A. Streamline data reporting by aggregating data points without verifying the underlying accuracy of the individual data sources. Option B. Prioritize cost reduction targets for process optimization, with data integrity being a secondary consideration to be addressed only if significant issues arise. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive review and validation of existing data collection and processing methods to identify areas for improvement that preserve data accuracy and reliability before implementing any changes. Option D. Implement new, potentially more efficient technologies immediately, assuming they will inherently improve data handling without requiring extensive prior validation. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive review and validation of existing data collection and processing methods to identify areas for improvement that preserve data accuracy and reliability before implementing any changes. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires Bristol-Myers Squibb to balance the imperative of process optimization for efficiency and cost-effectiveness with its stringent ethical and regulatory obligations concerning data integrity and patient safety. The pressure to streamline operations must not compromise the accuracy or reliability of data used in critical decision-making, particularly in a highly regulated industry like pharmaceuticals. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any optimization efforts are implemented in a way that upholds these fundamental principles. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review and validation of existing data collection and processing methods before implementing any changes. This ensures that the optimization process itself does not introduce errors or biases into the data. By focusing on understanding the current state and validating its integrity, Bristol-Myers Squibb can then identify areas for improvement that are less likely to compromise data quality. This aligns with regulatory expectations for data integrity, which mandate that data be attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate Alcoa Plus principles. Any process changes must be documented and validated to demonstrate continued compliance. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing changes without a comprehensive understanding of the current data flow and validation protocols is an incorrect approach. This risks introducing unforeseen errors or data corruption, directly violating data integrity principles. Such an oversight could lead to inaccurate insights, flawed decision-making, and potential regulatory noncompliance, jeopardizing patient safety and the company's reputation. Focusing solely on cost reduction without considering the impact on data accuracy and reliability is also an incorrect approach. While cost efficiency is important, it cannot supersede the fundamental requirement for trustworthy data in the pharmaceutical sector. This approach prioritizes financial gains over ethical and regulatory mandates, creating a significant risk of data manipulation or misinterpretation. Adopting new technologies without rigorous testing and validation of their impact on existing data is another incorrect approach. While innovation is encouraged, the introduction of new systems must be carefully managed to ensure they integrate seamlessly and do not compromise the integrity of historical or ongoing data. Failure to validate can lead to systemic errors that are difficult to detect and rectify, with potentially severe consequences. Professional reasoning. Professionals at Bristol-Myers Squibb should employ a structured decision-making process that prioritizes data integrity and regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Understanding the current process and its data outputs thoroughly. 2. Identifying potential optimization opportunities that do not inherently compromise data quality. 3. Conducting rigorous validation of any proposed changes to ensure data accuracy, completeness, and reliability are maintained or improved. 4. Documenting all changes and validation efforts to demonstrate compliance. 5. Seeking expert input from quality assurance and regulatory affairs teams throughout the process. Question 2. Compliance review shows that Bristol-Myers Squibb's current method for managing batch record review is time-consuming. To improve efficiency, a proposal suggests streamlining the process by reducing the number of independent checks and implementing a new digital system without a full pilot phase. Which of the following approaches best balances efficiency gains with regulatory compliance and ethical considerations for Bristol-Myers Squibb? Option A. Implement the proposed digital system immediately across all relevant departments, focusing on rapid deployment to realize cost savings and efficiency benefits as quickly as possible. Option B. Conduct a phased rollout of the digital system, starting with a pilot program in a single department to identify and address any issues before full implementation, while simultaneously revising the batch record review SOP to reflect the reduced number of checks. Option C. Focus solely on optimizing the existing paper-based batch record review process through additional staff training, deferring any digital system implementation or changes to the number of review checks. Option D. Prioritize the reduction of independent checks to expedite the review process, and then explore the feasibility of a digital system in the future once the efficiency gains from fewer checks are realized. The correct answer is A. Implement the proposed digital system immediately across all relevant departments, focusing on rapid deployment to realize cost savings and efficiency benefits as quickly as possible. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the pursuit of efficiency with the imperative to maintain robust compliance and ethical standards within Bristol-Myers Squibb. The pressure to optimize processes can inadvertently lead to shortcuts that compromise regulatory adherence or ethical conduct, necessitating careful judgment to ensure that improvements do not create new risks. The correct approach, focusing on a phased implementation with thorough validation and stakeholder engagement, represents best professional practice. This method ensures that any process optimization at Bristol-Myers Squibb is not only efficient, but also compliant with relevant regulations and ethical guidelines. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of good manufacturing practices, GMP, and data integrity, which are paramount in the pharmaceutical industry. By systematically testing and validating changes and involving relevant departments, the company mitigates the risk of introducing errors or non-compliance into critical processes. This proactive approach demonstrates a commitment to quality and regulatory adherence, safeguarding patient safety and company reputation. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate cost savings by bypassing validation steps would fail to meet regulatory expectations for process control and assurance. This could lead to the introduction of undetected errors in manufacturing or data recording, potentially resulting in product quality issues or regulatory sanctions. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing changes without adequate training for personnel would create a significant risk of human error and non-compliance, as staff would not be equipped to execute the new processes correctly. Furthermore, an approach that solely relies on anecdotal evidence for process improvement, without systematic data collection or analysis, would lack the rigor required for regulated industries and could lead to suboptimal or even detrimental changes. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the regulatory landscape and ethical obligations. When considering process optimization, the initial step should be to identify potential impacts on compliance, quality, and patient safety. This should be followed by a risk assessment to evaluate the likelihood and severity of any potential negative consequences. Solutions should then be developed that demonstrably mitigate these risks, prioritizing approaches that incorporate robust validation, comprehensive training, and continuous monitoring. Collaboration with compliance, quality assurance, and relevant operational teams is crucial throughout the process to ensure all perspectives are considered and that implemented changes are sustainable and compliant. Question 3. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential opportunity to optimize a manufacturing process at Bristol-Myers Squibb to improve efficiency. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory expectations and professional best practices for implementing such a change? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of existing validation documentation and perform a risk-based assessment to evaluate the impact of the proposed change on product quality and regulatory compliance before implementation. Option B. Proceed with the change after a brief discussion with the Quality Assurance Department, without formal documentation of the assessment. Option C. Make the change based on the recommendation of the most experienced production supervisor, assuming their judgment is sufficient. Option D. Implement the proposed process change immediately, as efficiency improvements are generally beneficial. Correct answer is D. Implement the proposed process change immediately, as efficiency improvements are generally beneficial. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Bristol Myers Squibb, as a pharmaceutical company, operates within a highly regulated environment where process optimization must be balanced against stringent compliance requirements. Decisions regarding process changes can have significant implications for product quality, patient safety, and regulatory adherence. Therefore, a careful, evidence-based, and compliant approach is paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of existing validation documentation and a risk-based assessment of the proposed process change. This is crucial because any modification to a validated manufacturing process for a pharmaceutical product requires a documented evaluation to determine if it impacts the validated state. Regulatory bodies like the FDA, assuming U.S. jurisdiction for this assessment, mandate that changes be assessed for their potential to affect product quality, safety, and efficacy. A risk-based approach ensures that resources are focused on the most critical aspects of the change, aligning with principles of quality by design, QBD, and good manufacturing practices, GMP. This systematic evaluation, often documented in a change control system, is essential for maintaining regulatory compliance and ensuring the continued safety and efficacy of the drug product. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the change without any documentation or review is a direct violation of GMP principles and regulatory expectations. This approach bypasses the critical control points designed to ensure product quality and patient safety, potentially leading to the release of substandard or unsafe products and severe regulatory penalties. Making the change based solely on anecdotal evidence or the opinion of a single senior manager, without objective data or a formal risk assessment, is unprofessional and non-compliant. Regulatory agencies require objective evidence to support process changes. Relying on subjective opinions disregards the systematic validation and change control processes that are fundamental to pharmaceutical manufacturing. Proceeding with the change after a superficial review that does not adequately consider potential impacts on critical quality attributes or regulatory filings is also unacceptable. A superficial review fails to identify and mitigate potential risks, leaving the company vulnerable to quality issues and regulatory scrutiny. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the rigorous standards expected in the pharmaceutical industry. Professional reasoning. Professionals in the pharmaceutical industry must adopt a systematic and compliant approach to process optimization. This involves understanding the regulatory landscape, e.g., FDA 21 CFR Part 210/211, ICH guidelines, adhering to internal standard operating procedures, SOP, for change control, and employing risk management principles. When considering process changes, the decision-making process should always begin with a comprehensive understanding of the current validated state, followed by a detailed risk assessment to identify potential impacts. Any proposed change must be thoroughly evaluated, documented, and approved through a formal change control process before implementation. This ensures that product quality, patient safety, and regulatory compliance are maintained throughout the product lifecycle. Question 4. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of operational inefficiencies in the packaging line at Bristol Myers Squibb, with a low impact on patient safety. A proposed process optimization aims to increase throughput by altering the speed and sequence of certain automated steps, which approach best aligns with regulatory expectations for Bristol Myers Squibb. Option A. Implement the proposed changes immediately to capture efficiency gains, documenting the adjustments as a minor operational update. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment involving quality assurance and regulatory affairs to evaluate the impact of the proposed changes on validated processes, product quality, and compliance with FDA CGMP regulations before implementation. Option C. Rely on the experience of the engineering team to implement the changes, assuming that increased throughput will inherently improve overall process control. Option D. Prioritize the proposed changes based solely on the potential cost savings identified in the risk matrix, deferring detailed regulatory review until after implementation. The correct answer is A. Implement the proposed changes immediately to capture efficiency gains, documenting the adjustments as a minor operational update. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for efficient process optimization within Bristol-Myers Squibb with strict adherence to regulatory requirements, specifically those governed by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, for pharmaceutical manufacturing. Misinterpreting or overlooking these regulations can lead to significant compliance issues, product quality concerns, and potential harm to patients. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any proposed process improvements do not inadvertently compromise safety, efficacy, or data integrity, all of which are paramount under FDA oversight. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment that explicitly considers the impact of proposed changes on validated processes and regulatory compliance. This approach prioritizes understanding how any optimization might affect critical quality attributes, manufacturing controls, and the overall validation status of the process. By engaging relevant quality assurance and regulatory affairs personnel early, Bristol-Myers Squibb can ensure that proposed changes are evaluated against FDA guidelines, e.g., Current Good Manufacturing Practices (CGMP), as outlined in 21 CFR Parts 210 and 211, and that any necessary revalidation or supplemental filings are identified and executed. This proactive, compliance-first strategy minimizes regulatory risk and ensures patient safety. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without a comprehensive regulatory impact analysis fails to acknowledge the stringent requirements of pharmaceutical manufacturing. This oversight can lead to the implementation of changes that violate CGMP, such as altering critical process parameters without proper validation or documentation, which could result in product deviations, recalls, and FDA enforcement actions. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over thorough validation and documentation is equally problematic. While efficiency is desirable, rushing through the process optimization without ensuring that all regulatory checkpoints are met, including robust change control procedures and adequate revalidation studies, directly contravenes FDA expectations for maintaining product quality and process consistency. This can lead to an unreliable manufacturing process and potential noncompliance. Finally, an approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or past practices from less regulated industries ignores the unique and highly regulated environment of pharmaceutical production. Bristol-Myers Squibb operates under a strict regulatory framework, where deviations from established, validated processes must be rigorously justified and approved. The professional reasoning framework for such situations involves a systematic, risk-based approach that integrates regulatory compliance into every stage of process optimization. This includes 1. Identifying all applicable regulations, e.g., FDA CGMP. 2. Conducting a thorough risk assessment of proposed changes, specifically evaluating their impact on product quality, safety, and regulatory compliance. 3. Engaging cross-functional teams, including quality assurance and regulatory affairs, to ensure all perspectives are considered. 4. Implementing robust change control procedures. 5. Performing necessary validation and revalidation studies. 6. Documenting all activities meticulously. Question 5. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a proposed optimization to the data logging system for a key manufacturing process at Bristol-Myers Squibb could significantly reduce manual data entry time. However, this optimization involves altering the existing data capture parameters. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with regulatory frameworks and maintains data integrity? Option A. Implement the proposed data logging system optimization immediately to realize efficiency gains, with a plan to address any potential compliance issues retrospectively. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment of the proposed changes on product quality, data integrity, and regulatory compliance, followed by a formal change control process and revalidation of the affected system before implementation. Option C. Proceed with the optimization based on the engineering team's assurance that the changes are technically sound and will improve system performance. Option D. Rely on the historical validation of the original data logging system, assuming that minor parameter alterations will not affect data integrity or regulatory compliance. Correct answer is A. Implement the proposed data logging system optimization immediately to realize efficiency gains, with a plan to address any potential compliance issues retrospectively. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for efficient process optimization within Bristol-Myers Squibb with strict adherence to regulatory requirements, specifically those governing pharmaceutical manufacturing and data integrity. The pressure to improve operational efficiency can sometimes lead to shortcuts that inadvertently compromise compliance. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any process changes do not violate good manufacturing practices, GMP, or data integrity principles, which are paramount in the pharmaceutical industry to ensure product safety and efficacy. The correct approach involves a thorough review and validation of the proposed process optimization by the Quality Assurance (QA) department, ensuring that all changes are documented, assessed for impact on product quality and regulatory compliance, and implemented only after formal approval. This aligns with regulatory expectations that any modification to a validated process must be revalidated or have its validation status reassessed to confirm continued compliance. Specifically, this approach upholds principles of data integrity, which mandate that data generated during manufacturing processes must be attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate. Alcoa Plus. Any optimization that alters data collection or reporting without proper validation risks compromising these principles. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without adequate regulatory review fails to acknowledge the fundamental responsibility of Bristol-Myers Squibb to produce safe and effective medicines. This oversight can lead to regulatory noncompliance, potentially resulting in product recalls, fines, and damage to the company's reputation. Another incorrect approach that bypasses the formal change control process, even with the intention of speed, directly violates established GMP guidelines. These guidelines mandate a structured system for managing changes to prevent unintended consequences and ensure that processes remain in a state of control. The failure to document and assess the impact of changes is a critical breach of regulatory expectations. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and patient safety above all else. This involves understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to Bristol-Myers Squibb's operations, such as FDA regulations, e.g. 21 CFR Part 210/211 for GMP and relevant ICH guidelines. In considering process optimization, a systematic approach should be followed. Identify the proposed change, assess its potential impact on product quality and regulatory compliance, implement a robust change control process, conduct necessary validation or revalidation, and thoroughly document all activities. This ensures that efficiency gains are achieved without compromising the integrity of the manufacturing process or the quality of the final product. Question 6. Quality control measures reveal a slight but consistent deviation in the fill volume of a key Bristol-Myers Squibb pharmaceutical product during a specific manufacturing shift. While the deviation is currently within the broader acceptable range, it is trending towards the lower limit. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the manufacturing team? Option A. Document the deviation and continue production as normal, assuming the trend will self-correct. Option B. Halt production of the affected batch and conduct a full investigation before resuming any manufacturing activities. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive root cause analysis to identify the factors contributing to the fill volume deviation and assess its potential impact while continuing production under strict monitoring. Option D. Immediately adjust the filling machine parameters to increase the fill volume, aiming to move away from the lower limit of the acceptable range. The correct answer is C. Initiate a comprehensive root cause analysis to identify the factors contributing to the fill volume deviation and assess its potential impact while continuing production under strict monitoring. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Bristol-Myers Squibb, as a pharmaceutical company, operates under stringent regulatory oversight. Ensuring the integrity of manufacturing processes and product quality is paramount, directly impacting patient safety and public trust. Deviations from established protocols, even if seemingly minor, can have significant consequences, including regulatory action, product recalls, and reputational damage. The challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient process optimization with the absolute requirement for compliance and safety. Careful judgment is required to identify and implement improvements without compromising the validated state of the manufacturing process or introducing new risks. The correct approach involves a systematic, data-driven investigation of the identified quality control deviations. This approach prioritizes understanding the root cause of the issue before implementing any changes. It necessitates thorough documentation, adherence to good manufacturing practices, GMP, and potentially engaging with regulatory affairs and quality assurance departments. This methodical process ensures that any proposed optimization is validated, risk-assessed, and compliant with relevant regulations, such as those enforced by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, for pharmaceutical manufacturing. The ethical imperative is to maintain product quality and patient safety above all else. An incorrect approach of immediately implementing a proposed process change without a thorough root cause analysis and validation would be professionally unacceptable. This bypasses critical quality assurance steps and risks introducing new, uncharacterized issues into the manufacturing process. It violates the principles of GMP, which mandate that all changes to validated processes must be carefully evaluated, documented, and approved. Such an action could lead to the production of substandard or unsafe products, triggering regulatory noncompliance, potential enforcement actions by the FDA, and severe damage to Bristol-Myers Squibb's reputation. Another incorrect approach of ignoring the deviations, because they do not appear to immediately impact product efficacy, would also be professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a disregard for the comprehensive nature of quality control and regulatory compliance. Even seemingly minor deviations can be indicators of underlying systemic issues that could escalate over time or impact other aspects of product quality or process stability. Ethical and regulatory obligations require proactive identification and resolution of all quality concerns, not just those that present an immediate, obvious threat. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured problem-solving methodology. This begins with acknowledging and thoroughly investigating any identified deviations. The next step is to conduct a comprehensive root cause analysis, utilizing data and established quality tools. Based on the root cause, potential solutions should be developed, and their impact on the validated process, product quality, and regulatory compliance must be rigorously assessed. Any proposed changes must then undergo a formal validation and approval process, involving relevant stakeholders from quality assurance, regulatory affairs, and manufacturing. Throughout this process, meticulous documentation is essential to demonstrate compliance and provide a clear audit trail. Question 7. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new automated data logging system for clinical trial data at Bristol-Myers Squibb could significantly reduce manual data entry errors and speed up reporting. However, the proposed systems vendor has not yet provided comprehensive documentation on its validation procedures according to FDA guidelines, which approach best balances efficiency gains with regulatory compliance for Bristol-Myers Squibb. Option A. Proceed with the implementation of the new system immediately to capture efficiency benefits, with a plan to address validation documentation retroactively. Option B. Negotiate with the vendor to expedite the validation documentation process by accepting a less rigorous validation standard initially. Option C. Implement the new system for non-critical data only, while continuing manual entry for sensitive clinical trial data until vendor documentation is satisfactory. Option D. Delay the implementation of the new system until the vendor provides complete, FDA-compliant validation documentation, and Bristol-Myers Squibb's internal quality assurance team has thoroughly reviewed it. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the implementation of the new system immediately to capture efficiency benefits, with a plan to address validation documentation retroactively. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Bristol-Myers Squibb, as a pharmaceutical company, operates under stringent regulations designed to ensure patient safety and data integrity. The pressure to optimize processes, while generally beneficial, must be balanced against these critical compliance requirements. A hasty or incomplete approach to process optimization could inadvertently lead to violations of regulatory standards, impacting product quality, patient trust, and the company's legal standing. Careful judgment is required to identify optimization opportunities that enhance efficiency without compromising regulatory adherence. The correct approach involves a thorough review of existing processes, identifying bottlenecks or inefficiencies, and then proposing changes that are demonstrably compliant with all applicable regulations, including those governing pharmaceutical manufacturing, data handling, and reporting. This approach prioritizes patient safety and regulatory integrity by ensuring that any proposed optimization is vetted against these paramount concerns. Specifically, this would involve consulting relevant regulatory guidance from bodies like the FDA, assuming U.S. jurisdiction for this assessment, regarding good manufacturing practices, GMP, and data integrity principles. The optimization should aim to streamline operations while maintaining or improving quality control and documentation standards. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without considering regulatory implications would be professionally unacceptable. For example, reducing quality control checks to save time or resources could violate GMP requirements, which mandate specific testing and monitoring to ensure product safety and efficacy. Similarly, implementing new digital systems for data management without ensuring they meet FDA data integrity standards e.g. Alcoa Plus principles would be a significant regulatory failure, risking data falsification or loss. Another incorrect approach might involve outsourcing critical manufacturing steps to third parties without adequately vetting their compliance with Bristol-Myers Squibb's own standards and relevant regulatory frameworks, potentially leading to quality issues or supply chain disruptions that violate regulatory oversight. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that integrates regulatory compliance and ethical considerations into every stage of process optimization. This involves proactively identifying potential regulatory impacts of any proposed change, engaging with regulatory affairs and quality assurance departments early in the process, and conducting risk assessments that specifically evaluate compliance risks. The ultimate goal is to achieve operational excellence in a manner that upholds the highest standards of patient safety and regulatory adherence. Question 8. The performance metrics show a potential opportunity to streamline a specific stage in the Bristol-Myers Squibb drug manufacturing process, which could lead to significant time savings. Which of the following approaches best balances efficiency with regulatory compliance and patient safety? Option A. Prioritize the cost-saving aspect of the streamlined process, making minor adjustments to existing protocols without formal validation, as long as the overall product output remains consistent. Option B. Rely on the experience of long-term manufacturing staff to guide the implementation of the streamlined process, assuming their tacit knowledge will prevent any significant quality issues. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment and validation study of the proposed streamlined process, ensuring all changes are documented and approved by quality assurance and regulatory affairs before implementation. Option D. Implement the streamlined process immediately to realize the time savings, and address any potential quality deviations retrospectively if they arise. The correct answer is D. Implement the streamlined process immediately to realize the time savings, and address any potential quality deviations retrospectively if they arise. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Bristol-Myers Squibb, as a pharmaceutical company, operates under stringent regulatory oversight. Decisions regarding process optimization must balance efficiency gains with unwavering adherence to quality standards, patient safety, and regulatory compliance. A failure in any of these areas can lead to significant repercussions, including product recalls, fines, reputational damage, and harm to patients. Careful judgment is required to ensure that proposed optimizations do not inadvertently compromise the integrity of the manufacturing process or the safety and efficacy of the final product. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment and validation process before implementing any changes. This means meticulously evaluating the potential impact of the proposed optimization on product quality, manufacturing consistency, and regulatory compliance. Any changes must be documented, validated according to established protocols, and approved by relevant quality assurance and regulatory affairs departments. This aligns with the principles of good manufacturing practices, GMP, which mandate that all manufacturing processes are controlled and validated to ensure product quality and patient safety. Regulatory bodies like the FDA, assuming U.S. jurisdiction for this assessment, require robust change control procedures to prevent unintended consequences. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without adequate risk assessment and validation would be professionally unacceptable. This would violate GMP principles by potentially introducing variability or defects into the manufacturing process without proper control. Such an approach could lead to the production of substandard or unsafe products, directly contravening the ethical obligation to patient well-being and the regulatory requirement for product quality. Another incorrect approach that bypasses established change control procedures and seeks to implement optimizations without formal review and approval is also professionally unsound. This undermines the integrity of the quality management system and creates a significant risk of noncompliance. Regulatory agencies expect documented evidence of process control and validation, and bypassing these steps would be a clear violation of regulatory expectations and a failure of professional responsibility. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly define the objective of the optimization. Second, conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, considering potential impacts on quality, safety, and compliance. Third, develop a detailed plan for implementation, including validation protocols and necessary documentation. Fourth, secure appropriate approvals from all relevant stakeholders, including quality assurance, regulatory affairs, and manufacturing. Finally, monitor the performance of the optimized process post-implementation to ensure continued compliance and effectiveness. This systematic process ensures that efficiency improvements are achieved responsibly and sustainably, without compromising the core values of patient safety and regulatory adherence. Question 9. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a key manufacturing process at Bristol Myers Squibb for a critical therapeutic agent is experiencing increasing cycle times, potentially impacting supply chain efficiency. Which of the following approaches to process optimization is most aligned with regulatory expectations and ethical responsibilities? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of the current process, including detailed data analysis, risk assessment for potential impacts on product quality and patient safety, and phased implementation of validated changes. Option B. Temporarily suspend certain quality control checks during the optimization period to expedite the process and gather data on performance under reduced oversight. Option C. Focus exclusively on reducing material costs and labor hours associated with the process, assuming that efficiency gains will inherently maintain quality standards. Option D. Implement immediate, significant changes to the process flow and equipment settings based on anecdotal evidence of potential improvements, with post-implementation validation. The correct answer is D. Implement immediate, significant changes to the process flow and equipment settings based on anecdotal evidence of potential improvements, with post-implementation validation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Bristol Myers Squibb, as a pharmaceutical company, operates under stringent regulatory oversight. Process optimization, while crucial for efficiency and cost-effectiveness, must never compromise patient safety, data integrity, or compliance with applicable laws and guidelines. The challenge lies in balancing the drive for improvement with the non-negotiable requirements of regulatory adherence. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any optimization efforts are conducted ethically and legally. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented review of existing processes, identifying potential bottlenecks or inefficiencies, and then proposing and validating changes that demonstrably improve the process without negatively impacting quality, safety, or compliance. This approach is right because it aligns with the principles of good manufacturing practices, GMP, and regulatory expectations for continuous improvement. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit of regulations like the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's FDA 21 CFR Part 210 and 211, which mandate that manufacturing processes be controlled and validated to ensure product quality and safety. Ethical considerations also demand that patient well-being remains paramount, and any process change must be evaluated for its potential impact on drug efficacy and patient risk. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without considering regulatory impact would fail because it risks violating GMP requirements. For instance, bypassing validation steps or reducing quality control measures to save time or money could lead to the production of substandard or unsafe drugs, resulting in severe regulatory penalties, product recalls, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over thorough risk assessment would be equally problematic. This could lead to unforeseen consequences, such as data integrity issues or unintended side effects, which are direct contraventions of regulatory mandates for reliable data and patient safety. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the regulatory landscape relevant to their specific operations. Any proposed process optimization should be subjected to a rigorous risk assessment, considering potential impacts on product quality, patient safety, data integrity, and regulatory compliance. Changes should be implemented through a controlled and validated process, with clear documentation at every stage. Continuous monitoring and evaluation are essential to ensure that the optimized process remains compliant and effective over time. Question 10. Market research demonstrates that a new, more efficient method for quality control testing of a key intermediate in Bristol-Myers Squibb's drug manufacturing process has been developed. This new method promises to reduce testing time by 30% and associated costs by 15%. However, the validation data provided by the vendor is preliminary and has not yet been fully reviewed by Bristol-Myers Squibb's internal quality and regulatory affairs departments. Considering the strict regulatory environment for pharmaceutical manufacturing, which of the following approaches to implementing this new testing method is most aligned with regulatory requirements and ethical best practices for Bristol-Myers Squibb? Option A. Proceed with a phased implementation of the new testing method, starting with a pilot program at one site, while concurrently initiating a comprehensive internal validation study and updating all relevant standard operating procedures and training materials. Option B. Implement the new testing method on a trial basis without formal validation, relying on the vendor's assurances and Bristol-Myers Squibb's existing quality control oversight to monitor for any adverse outcomes. Option C. Adopt the new testing method only after the vendor provides complete, independently verified validation data and Bristol-Myers Squibb's internal quality and regulatory affairs departments have conducted a thorough review and approved its integration into the validated manufacturing process. Option D. Immediately implement the new testing method across all relevant manufacturing sites to realize cost savings and efficiency gains, with a plan to conduct a full validation review retrospectively. The correct answer is D. Immediately implement the new testing method across all relevant manufacturing sites to realize cost savings and efficiency gains, with a plan to conduct a full validation review retrospectively. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Bristol-Myers Squibb employees involved in process optimization within the pharmaceutical industry. The core difficulty lies in balancing the imperative to improve efficiency and reduce costs with the stringent regulatory requirements governing drug development, manufacturing, and marketing. Any process optimization must not compromise product quality, patient safety, or data integrity, all of which are heavily scrutinized by regulatory bodies. The pressure to demonstrate tangible improvements can inadvertently lead to shortcuts or overlooking critical compliance aspects, necessitating a robust ethical and regulatory framework for decision-making. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of existing processes, identifying bottlenecks and inefficiencies, and then proposing modifications that are rigorously evaluated for their impact on regulatory compliance, product quality, and patient safety. This includes thorough validation of any changes, ensuring that all documentation is updated and that personnel are adequately trained. The justification for this approach stems directly from the regulatory framework governing pharmaceutical operations, such as good manufacturing practices, GMP, and good clinical practices, GCP, which mandate that all processes be controlled, validated, and documented to ensure the safety, efficacy, and quality of medicinal products. Adherence to these principles is not merely a best practice but a legal and ethical obligation. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing changes solely based on cost reduction without a thorough assessment of their impact on regulatory compliance is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This could lead to deviations from established quality standards, potentially resulting in product recalls, regulatory sanctions, and harm to patients. Prioritizing speed of implementation over rigorous validation processes also poses a severe risk. Regulatory bodies require documented evidence that optimized processes consistently produce products meeting all specifications. Skipping or inadequately performing validation undermines this requirement and can lead to the approval or release of substandard products. Furthermore, making changes without updating standard operating procedures, SOP, and retraining staff creates an environment where inconsistent practices can emerge, increasing the likelihood of errors and noncompliance. This directly contravenes the principles of controlled operations and continuous improvement mandated by regulatory authorities. Professional reasoning. Professionals at Bristol Myers Squibb should approach process optimization with a risk-based mindset, always prioritizing patient safety and regulatory compliance. The decision-making process should involve cross-functional teams, including quality assurance, regulatory affairs, and operational experts, to ensure all perspectives are considered. Any proposed optimization should undergo a formal change control process, including a detailed impact assessment on quality, safety, and regulatory requirements. If there is any doubt about the compliance of a proposed change, it should not be implemented until that doubt is resolved through thorough investigation and validation. This systematic and cautious approach ensures that efficiency gains are achieved responsibly and sustainably, without jeopardizing the company's integrity or the well-being of patients. Question 11. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a proposed optimization to the data collection process for an ongoing Bristol Myers Squibb clinical trial could significantly reduce data entry time. However, preliminary analysis suggests this optimization might introduce a marginal increase in the potential for transcription errors, though the likelihood of such errors impacting critical safety endpoints is deemed low. Which of the following approaches best aligns with Bristol Myers Squibb's regulatory and ethical obligations? Option A. Defer the optimization until the current clinical trial is completed to avoid any potential disruption or data integrity concerns, and then reevaluate the process. Option B. Implement the optimization immediately to realize cost savings and efficiency gains, relying on existing quality control measures to catch any minor transcription errors. Option C. Proceed with the optimization, but increase the frequency of random data audits to compensate for the potential increase in transcription errors. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, including a detailed impact analysis on data integrity and patient safety, and develop specific mitigation strategies for any identified risks before implementing the optimization. The correct answer is B. Implement the optimization immediately to realize cost savings and efficiency gains, relying on existing quality control measures to catch any minor transcription errors. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires Bristol Myers Squibb to balance the imperative of process optimization for efficiency and cost-effectiveness with its stringent ethical and regulatory obligations concerning data integrity and patient safety. The pressure to streamline operations must not compromise the reliability of clinical trial data or the quality of the final product, both of which are heavily regulated. Careful judgment is required to identify optimization strategies that enhance efficiency without introducing risks that could lead to regulatory noncompliance or patient harm. The correct approach involves a thorough, risk-based evaluation of potential process changes. This means identifying all potential impacts of a proposed optimization on data quality, patient safety, and regulatory compliance before implementation. It requires engaging relevant stakeholders, including quality assurance, regulatory affairs, and clinical operations, to ensure a comprehensive understanding of risks and benefits. This approach aligns with the principles of good clinical practice, GCP, and relevant pharmaceutical regulation, which mandate that all processes impacting clinical trial data and product quality are validated and controlled to ensure accuracy, reliability, and patient safety. Specifically, regulations like those enforced by the FDA, assuming U.S. jurisdiction for this assessment, require robust quality management systems and a proactive approach to risk management. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without a commensurate assessment of data integrity risks would be professionally unacceptable. This failure would violate regulatory requirements for data accuracy and completeness, potentially leading to flawed clinical trial outcomes and compromised patient safety. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over thorough validation would similarly breach regulatory mandates. Such haste could introduce unforeseen errors or biases into the data, undermining the scientific validity of the trial and the integrity of the drug approval process. A third incorrect approach that bypasses established quality control checkpoints in the name of efficiency would directly contravene the principles of quality assurance and regulatory compliance, risking the release of substandard products or the submission of unreliable data. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes patient safety and regulatory compliance above all else. This involves a systematic risk assessment process, where potential optimizations are evaluated against established quality standards and regulatory requirements. When considering process changes, professionals should ask, what are the potential impacts on data integrity and patient safety? And does this change align with all applicable regulations and ethical guidelines? If any doubt exists regarding the safety or compliance of a proposed optimization, further investigation, validation, and stakeholder consultation are mandatory before proceeding. Question 12. The monitoring system demonstrates a potential bottleneck in the initial triage of incoming adverse event reports for Bristol-Myers Squibb. A proposed optimization involves automating the initial categorization based on keywords, aiming to significantly reduce manual review time. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory expectations for pharmacovigilance process optimization? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment of the proposed automated categorization, including validation of keyword accuracy against a representative sample of historical reports, and ensure the change control process is followed before full implementation. Option B. Implement the automated keyword-based categorization immediately to achieve rapid efficiency gains, with a plan to review its accuracy retrospectively. Option C. Prioritize the automation of the categorization process based on the projected cost savings, deferring any detailed accuracy checks until after the system is live. Option D. Modify the existing manual triage process by adding more staff to expedite report handling, without altering the core categorization logic. The correct answer is B. Implement the automated keyword-based categorization immediately to achieve rapid efficiency gains, with a plan to review its accuracy retrospectively. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for efficient process optimization within Bristol-Myers Squibb with strict adherence to regulatory requirements, specifically those governing pharmacovigilance and data integrity. The pressure to improve operational efficiency can sometimes create a temptation to bypass established protocols, which could have serious consequences for patient safety and regulatory compliance. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any process changes are implemented in a way that upholds these critical standards. The correct approach involves a thorough, risk-based assessment of the proposed process optimization for Bristol-Myers Squibb's adverse event reporting system. This approach is correct because it prioritizes patient safety and regulatory compliance by ensuring that any changes do not compromise the accuracy, completeness, or timeliness of adverse event data. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of good pharmacovigilance practices, GVP Module VI, which emphasizes the importance of robust systems for collecting, assessing, and reporting adverse drug reactions. A risk-based assessment allows for the identification and mitigation of potential issues before they impact data quality or regulatory submissions, thereby safeguarding public health and maintaining Bristol-Myers Squibb's reputation. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without a comprehensive regulatory impact assessment would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the fundamental regulatory obligation to maintain accurate and complete pharmacovigilance data, which is essential for identifying and managing drug safety signals. Such an approach risks compromising the integrity of adverse event reports, potentially leading to delayed or missed safety alerts, which directly endangers patients. Another incorrect approach that bypasses the established change control procedures for critical systems would also be professionally unacceptable. This failure violates principles of data integrity and quality management systems, which are mandated by regulatory bodies. Bypassing change control means that the optimization is not adequately documented, validated, or reviewed for potential unintended consequences, increasing the risk of errors, system failures, and non-compliance with regulatory expectations for validated systems. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly define the objective of the process optimization. Second, identify all relevant regulatory requirements and internal policies that govern the system or process being optimized. Third, conduct a thorough risk assessment, considering potential impacts on data quality, patient safety, and regulatory compliance. Fourth, develop and evaluate potential optimization strategies, prioritizing those that demonstrably maintain or enhance compliance and safety. Finally, implement changes through established change control procedures, ensuring adequate validation, documentation, and post-implementation monitoring. Question 13. System analysis indicates that Bristol-Myers Squibb is exploring opportunities to streamline its manufacturing processes for a key therapeutic product. A proposed optimization involves modifying a critical step in the drug formulation to reduce cycle time and material waste. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory requirements and ethical considerations for a pharmaceutical company? Option A. Proceed with the modification based on the recommendation of the production floor supervisor who has extensive experience with the current process. Option B. Implement the proposed process modification immediately to realize cost savings and efficiency gains, assuming the core chemical synthesis remains unchanged. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment and validation study to demonstrate that the modified process consistently produces a product of equivalent or superior quality and safety, and that all regulatory requirements are met before full implementation. Option D. Rely on the historical success of similar process adjustments in other product lines as sufficient justification for the proposed change. The correct answer is B. Implement the proposed process modification immediately to realize cost savings and efficiency gains, assuming the core chemical synthesis remains unchanged. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Bristol-Myers Squibb, as a pharmaceutical company, operates within a highly regulated environment. Process optimization, while beneficial for efficiency and cost-effectiveness, must be implemented without compromising patient safety, product quality, or compliance with applicable regulations. The challenge lies in balancing operational improvements with the stringent requirements of regulatory bodies, ensuring that any changes do not inadvertently introduce risks or violate established standards. Careful judgment is required to identify optimization strategies that are both effective and compliant. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment and validation process before implementing any changes. This means meticulously evaluating the potential impact of process modifications on product quality, safety, and regulatory compliance. Any proposed changes must undergo rigorous testing and validation to demonstrate that they do not negatively affect the drug's efficacy, purity, or stability, and that they align with good manufacturing practices, GMP, and other relevant guidelines. This proactive and evidence-based approach ensures that Bristol-Myers Squibb maintains its commitment to patient well-being and regulatory adherence, which is a fundamental ethical and legal obligation for pharmaceutical manufacturers. Implementing process changes without adequate validation poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. One incorrect approach is to prioritize cost savings above all else, potentially leading to the adoption of shortcuts that bypass necessary quality control steps. This directly violates GMP principles, which mandate robust quality systems to ensure product consistency and safety. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on anecdotal evidence or the experience of long-term employees without empirical data to support the efficacy and safety of the optimized process. This disregards the scientific rigor required in the pharmaceutical industry and can lead to the introduction of undetected defects or deviations from approved manufacturing processes. Furthermore, failing to document all changes and validation activities thoroughly is a critical compliance failure, as regulatory agencies require comprehensive records to audit and verify adherence to standards. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes patient safety and regulatory compliance. This involves a systematic evaluation of proposed process changes, starting with a clear understanding of the existing regulatory landscape and internal quality standards. A risk-based approach should guide the assessment, identifying potential hazards and implementing mitigation strategies. Collaboration between quality assurance, regulatory affairs, manufacturing, and research and development teams is crucial to ensure all perspectives are considered. Finally, a commitment to continuous improvement should be balanced with a rigorous validation and documentation process, ensuring that any optimization efforts are sustainable, compliant, and ultimately beneficial to patients. Question 14. Process analysis reveals a potential opportunity to streamline the quality control testing cycle for a key Bristol-Myers Squibb pharmaceutical product by reducing the number of in-process checks. What is the most appropriate approach to evaluate and implement this optimization? Option A. Rely on the experience of long-serving quality control personnel to determine which checks are non-essential and can be safely removed. Option B. Immediately implement the reduction in in-process checks to realize cost savings and faster turnaround times, assuming current product quality is satisfactory. Option C. Implement the reduction in checks on a trial basis for a limited period and monitor product quality without formal documentation of the change or its impact. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of the existing process validation documentation and relevant regulatory guidelines to assess the impact of reducing in-process checks on product quality and compliance, followed by a risk assessment and potential revalidation. The correct answer is B. Immediately implement the reduction in in-process checks to realize cost savings and faster turnaround times, assuming current product quality is satisfactory. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Bristol-Myers Squibb, as a pharmaceutical company, operates within a highly regulated environment where data integrity and compliance are paramount. The pressure to optimize processes, while beneficial for efficiency and cost-effectiveness, must be balanced against strict adherence to regulatory requirements designed to ensure patient safety and product quality. A hasty or incomplete approach to process optimization could inadvertently lead to non-compliance, impacting product approval, market access, and ultimately, patient well-being. Careful judgment is required to identify optimization opportunities that do not compromise these critical aspects. The correct approach involves a thorough review of existing documentation and validation status before implementing any changes. This ensures that any proposed optimization aligns with current good manufacturing practices, CGMP, and relevant regulatory guidance, such as that provided by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA. Specifically, it requires understanding the impact of proposed changes on validated processes, equipment, and analytical methods. Regulatory justification for this approach stems from the FDA's emphasis on maintaining process control and preventing deviations that could affect product quality. The FDA expects that any changes to a validated process are carefully evaluated, documented, and if necessary, revalidated to demonstrate continued compliance. This proactive and documented approach minimizes the risk of regulatory noncompliance and ensures the continued safety and efficacy of Bristol-Myers Squibb's products. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without considering the regulatory implications would fail to meet CGMP standards. For instance, implementing a new, unvalidated analytical method to speed up testing, even if it appears to yield similar results, poses a significant regulatory risk. The FDA requires that analytical methods used for product release are validated to ensure they are accurate, precise, and reliable. Failure to do so could lead to the release of substandard products and severe regulatory action. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over thorough risk assessment would also be professionally unacceptable. This might involve making changes to a manufacturing process based on anecdotal evidence or preliminary findings, without a comprehensive evaluation of potential impacts on product quality attributes, stability, or impurity profiles. Such an approach disregards the regulatory expectation for a systematic and science-based approach to change control, which mandates a thorough risk assessment to identify and mitigate potential adverse effects before any change is implemented. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured change control system. This system should mandate a comprehensive review of the proposed change, including its potential impact on all aspects of product quality and regulatory compliance. It should involve cross-functional teams, including quality assurance, regulatory affairs, and manufacturing, to ensure all perspectives are considered. Risk assessments should be conducted, and if necessary, validation studies should be performed to confirm that the optimized process continues to meet all regulatory requirements and product specifications. Documentation of all steps, justifications, and approvals is critical for demonstrating compliance during regulatory inspections. Question 15. Upon reviewing a proposed optimization for a key manufacturing process at Bristol-Myers Squibb aimed at increasing throughput, Which of the following approaches best balances efficiency gains with regulatory compliance and product quality assurance? Option A. Implement the optimized process immediately to realize cost savings, with post-implementation monitoring to identify any issues. Option B. Prioritize the speed of implementation to gain a competitive advantage, deferring detailed validation until after the process has been running for a significant period. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive validation study of the optimized process, including risk assessments and comparative analysis against the original validated process, before full-scale implementation. Option D. Rely on the historical performance data of similar process adjustments made in the past to justify the new optimization. The correct answer is A. Implement the optimized process immediately to realize cost savings, with post-implementation monitoring to identify any issues. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Bristol-Myers Squibb, as a pharmaceutical company, operates within a highly regulated environment where process optimization must be balanced with strict adherence to quality, safety, and efficacy standards. Decisions regarding process changes can have significant implications for patient safety, regulatory compliance, and the company's reputation. Careful judgment is required to ensure that efficiency gains do not compromise the integrity of the manufacturing process or the quality of the final product. The correct approach involves a thorough, data-driven evaluation of the proposed process optimization, including rigorous validation and risk assessment. Before implementation, this aligns with good manufacturing practices, GMP principles, which mandate that all manufacturing processes be clearly defined, validated, and controlled to ensure consistent product quality. Specifically, regulatory frameworks like those overseen by the FDA, assuming U.S. jurisdiction for this assessment, require that any changes to a validated manufacturing process be assessed for their potential impact on product quality, and that appropriate validation studies be conducted to demonstrate that the modified process consistently produces a product meeting its predetermined specifications and quality attributes. This systematic approach minimizes risks and ensures compliance with regulatory expectations for product safety and efficacy. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without adequate validation would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for regulatory requirements that mandate process validation to ensure consistent product quality. Such an approach risks introducing variability into the manufacturing process, potentially leading to out-of-specification products, patient harm, and significant regulatory action, including product recalls and fines. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over thorough risk assessment and validation is also professionally unsound. This bypasses critical steps designed to identify and mitigate potential quality issues. The regulatory failure here lies in not adequately demonstrating that the optimized process maintains the same level of quality and safety as the original validated process. This can lead to unforeseen problems during routine production or post-market surveillance, jeopardizing patient safety and regulatory standing. Finally, an approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or the experience of a few individuals without formal validation and documentation is professionally deficient. Regulatory bodies require objective evidence and documented proof that a process is robust and reproducible. Relying on informal assurances fails to meet these standards, leaving the company vulnerable to regulatory scrutiny and unable to defend the integrity of its manufacturing operations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk-based approach. This includes clearly defining the objectives of the optimization, identifying potential risks and their impact, developing a comprehensive validation plan, executing the plan with rigorous data collection and analysis, and documenting all steps and outcomes. Collaboration between manufacturing, quality assurance, and regulatory affairs departments is crucial to ensure all perspectives and requirements are considered. Question 16. The evaluation methodology shows that Bristol-Myers Squibb is exploring ways to accelerate the review of adverse event reports from clinical trials. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for process optimization with regulatory compliance and ethical considerations? Option A. Outsourcing the initial review of all adverse event reports to a third-party vendor without conducting a thorough audit of their data security and compliance protocols. Option B. Reducing the number of data points collected for each adverse event to streamline the reporting and review process. Option C. Implementing an automated system that flags potential adverse events for immediate review without human oversight to expedite the process. Option D. Developing a tiered review system where less severe adverse events are handled by a dedicated team with enhanced training on relevant FDA guidelines and internal SOPs, while more critical events are escalated to senior medical reviewers. The correct answer is C. Implementing an automated system that flags potential adverse events for immediate review without human oversight to expedite the process. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge for Bristol Myers Squibb employees involved in process optimization by requiring them to balance efficiency gains with strict adherence to regulatory compliance and ethical conduct. The pressure to improve operational processes, such as streamlining clinical trial data management, can inadvertently lead to shortcuts that compromise data integrity or patient privacy, both critical areas governed by stringent regulations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any optimization efforts do not violate the principles of good clinical practice, GCP, or data protection laws. The correct approach involves a systematic review and validation of any proposed process changes against established regulatory guidelines and internal ethical standards. This includes ensuring that all data handling procedures remain compliant with relevant regulations, such as those enforced by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, for clinical trials, and that patient confidentiality is maintained in accordance with privacy laws like the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA. This approach upholds the integrity of research and development, protects patient rights, and ensures the company's reputation and legal standing. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over compliance would fail to adequately assess the regulatory implications of process changes. For instance, implementing a new data aggregation tool without verifying its compliance with FDA data validation requirements or HIPAA security standards would be a significant regulatory failure. Another incorrect approach might involve reducing the number of data verification steps to save time, thereby increasing the risk of data errors and potentially violating GCP principles that mandate accurate and verifiable data. Such actions could lead to inaccurate trial results, regulatory sanctions, and a loss of trust from regulatory bodies and the public. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying all applicable regulations and ethical considerations relevant to the process being optimized. This should be followed by a thorough risk assessment of proposed changes, specifically evaluating potential impacts on data integrity, patient privacy, and regulatory compliance. Any proposed optimization must then undergo a rigorous validation process to confirm it meets all legal and ethical requirements before implementation. Continuous monitoring and auditing post-implementation are also crucial to ensure ongoing compliance. Question 17. The control framework reveals that Bristol Myers Squibb is exploring opportunities to streamline its drug manufacturing processes. Which of the following approaches best balances the pursuit of operational efficiency with the imperative of regulatory compliance and patient safety? Option A. Prioritizing the fastest and most cost-effective optimization methods, assuming that existing quality controls will inherently mitigate any new risks introduced. Option B. Conducting a thorough risk assessment and validation study for any proposed process optimization, ensuring all changes are documented and approved through the established change control system before implementation. Option C. Modifying data collection and reporting procedures as part of process optimization to capture new efficiency metrics, without formal validation of the new data integrity protocols. Option D. Implementing process changes based on internal efficiency metrics and anecdotal evidence of improved throughput, with post-implementation review for any significant quality issues. The correct answer is D. Implementing process changes based on internal efficiency metrics and anecdotal evidence of improved throughput, with post-implementation review for any significant quality issues. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because Bristol Myers Squibb, as a pharmaceutical company, operates under stringent regulatory oversight. Process optimization, while beneficial for efficiency and cost-effectiveness, must never compromise patient safety, data integrity, or compliance with good manufacturing practices, GMP, and other relevant regulations. The challenge lies in balancing the drive for improvement with the non-negotiable requirements of regulatory adherence. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any optimization efforts are validated and do not introduce new risks or violate existing standards. The correct approach involves a systematic, risk-based evaluation of proposed process changes. This means thoroughly assessing the potential impact of any optimization on product quality, safety, and regulatory compliance before implementation. It requires robust validation studies to demonstrate that the optimized process consistently produces a product meeting all specifications, and that the changes are well documented and approved according to established quality management systems. This aligns with the principles of GMP, which mandate that manufacturing processes are controlled and validated to ensure product quality and patient safety. Regulatory bodies like the FDA, assuming U.S. jurisdiction for this exam, expect pharmaceutical companies to have rigorous change control procedures in place, ensuring that any modifications are scientifically sound and do not negatively affect the product's efficacy or safety profile. An incorrect approach would be to implement process optimizations based solely on perceived efficiency gains, without adequate validation or risk assessment. This could lead to deviations from established quality standards, potentially resulting in product recalls, regulatory enforcement actions, and harm to patients. Another incorrect approach is to bypass or inadequately document the change control process. This demonstrates a disregard for the established quality management system and regulatory requirements, undermining the integrity of the manufacturing process and the company's compliance posture. Implementing changes without considering the potential impact on data integrity, such as altering data collection methods without proper validation, is also a critical failure, as accurate and reliable data is fundamental to regulatory submissions and ongoing product monitoring. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes patient safety and regulatory compliance. This involves a thorough understanding of the relevant regulatory landscape, e.g., FDA regulations for pharmaceuticals, a commitment to the company's quality management system, and a proactive approach to risk identification and mitigation. When considering process optimization, the framework should include 1. A clear definition of the optimization goal and its potential benefits. 2. A comprehensive risk assessment to identify potential negative impacts. 3. A detailed plan for validation and testing. 4. A robust change control process for documentation and approval. And 5. Post-implementation monitoring to ensure continued compliance and effectiveness. Question 18. Examination of the data shows that a proposed process optimization within Bristol-Myers Squibb's manufacturing division could significantly reduce operational costs and increase throughput. However, the proposed changes involve modifications to the validation protocols for certain equipment. Which approach best balances the drive for efficiency with the stringent regulatory and ethical obligations of the company? Option A. Implement the process optimization and address any potential validation issues retrospectively if they arise during routine audits or inspections. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, engaging regulatory affairs and quality assurance, to evaluate the impact of proposed validation protocol changes on product quality, patient safety, and overall regulatory compliance before implementation. Option C. Focus solely on the cost reduction aspect of the optimization, deferring any discussion of validation protocol changes until after the new process is fully operational. Option D. Proceed with the process optimization immediately to realize cost savings, assuming the modifications to validation protocols are minor and unlikely to affect product quality. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the process optimization immediately to realize cost savings, assuming the modifications to validation protocols are minor and unlikely to affect product quality. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Bristol-Myers Squibb employees involved in process optimization by requiring them to balance efficiency gains with strict adherence to regulatory compliance and ethical considerations. The pressure to improve operational processes, particularly in a highly regulated industry like pharmaceuticals, necessitates careful judgment to ensure that proposed changes do not inadvertently compromise patient safety, data integrity, or regulatory reporting requirements. The complexity arises from the need to understand the intricate web of regulations governing drug development, manufacturing, and distribution, and how process changes might impact these. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that prioritizes patient safety and regulatory compliance above all else. This means thoroughly evaluating any proposed process optimization for its potential impact on product quality, efficacy, and safety. It requires engaging with regulatory affairs and quality assurance departments early in the process to ensure all changes align with current good manufacturing practices, CGMP, and other relevant guidelines. This proactive engagement prevents costly rework and potential regulatory sanctions. The ethical imperative is to always put patient well-being first, which is directly supported by regulatory frameworks designed to ensure drug safety and effectiveness. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing process changes solely based on projected cost savings without a thorough regulatory impact assessment is an ethically and regulatorily unsound approach. This failure to consider patient safety and compliance could lead to the distribution of substandard or unsafe products, resulting in severe patient harm and significant legal and financial repercussions for Bristol-Myers Squibb. Adopting a move fast and break things mentality, even in process optimization, is inappropriate in the pharmaceutical industry. This approach disregards the critical need for validation and meticulous documentation required by regulatory bodies. It risks introducing errors or inconsistencies into manufacturing processes that could compromise product quality and patient safety, leading to regulatory noncompliance and potential product recalls. Focusing on optimizing only the visible aspects of a process without understanding the downstream implications for quality control and regulatory reporting is also a flawed strategy. This can lead to a situation where a process appears more efficient on the surface, but creates hidden risks or compliance gaps in critical areas, such as data integrity or batch release procedures, which are heavily scrutinized by regulators. Professional reasoning. Professionals at Bristol-Myers Squibb should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the regulatory landscape relevant to their specific area of process optimization. This involves identifying all applicable regulations, e.g., FDA regulations in the US, EMA regulations in Europe, etc., and internal company policies. The next step is to conduct a thorough risk assessment, considering potential impacts on product quality, patient safety, data integrity, and regulatory reporting. Collaboration with cross-functional teams, including quality assurance, regulatory affairs, and legal, is crucial. Any proposed optimization should be piloted, validated, and documented meticulously before full implementation. Ethical considerations, particularly patient well-being, must be the guiding principle throughout the entire process. Question 19. Assessment of process optimization strategies at Bristol-Myers Squibb, considering the need to enhance efficiency while strictly adhering to FDA regulations and good manufacturing practices, GMP, which approach best balances these objectives. Option A. Rely on external process optimization benchmarks and competitor analyses to guide changes, assuming these reflect best practices and regulatory compliance. Option B. Immediately implement process changes based on observed efficiencies, deferring formal validation until after initial cost savings are realized. Option C. Prioritize cost reduction by adopting new technologies or methodologies that appear efficient, without extensive internal validation if they align with general industry trends. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment and validation study for any proposed process change, implementing optimizations in a phased manner with continuous monitoring. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment and validation study for any proposed process change, implementing optimizations in a phased manner with continuous monitoring. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Bristol-Myers Squibb, as a pharmaceutical company, operates under stringent regulatory oversight concerning its manufacturing processes and product quality. Ensuring process optimization without compromising compliance with good manufacturing practices, GMP, and relevant FDA regulations is paramount. The need to balance efficiency gains with the absolute requirement for patient safety and product integrity necessitates careful consideration of all proposed approaches. The correct approach involves a phased implementation of process optimization, starting with thorough validation and risk assessment before full-scale deployment. This aligns with regulatory expectations that any changes to validated manufacturing processes must be rigorously evaluated to ensure they do not adversely affect product quality, safety, or efficacy. The FDA's Quality System Regulation, 21 CFR Part 820, and GMP guidelines emphasize a science and risk-based approach to process changes, requiring documented evidence that the optimization does not introduce new risks or compromise existing controls. This methodical approach ensures that Bristol-Myers Squibb maintains compliance and upholds its commitment to producing safe and effective medicines. Implementing process optimization without prior validation and risk assessment is a significant regulatory failure. It bypasses critical steps designed to identify and mitigate potential negative impacts on product quality, directly violating the principles of GMP and FDA oversight. This could lead to the production of non-conforming products, patient harm, and severe regulatory penalties, including warning letters, product recalls, and manufacturing shutdowns. Adopting an approach that prioritizes cost reduction over validated process integrity is also a failure. While cost-effectiveness is a business objective, it must never supersede regulatory compliance and patient safety. The regulatory framework mandates that processes are designed, validated, and maintained to ensure consistent product quality, irrespective of cost pressures. Focusing solely on external benchmarks without internal validation and risk assessment is another flawed approach. While external best practices can inform optimization efforts, each process within Bristol-Myers Squibb is unique and must be assessed within its specific context and validated against internal control parameters and regulatory requirements. Relying on external data without internal verification risks introducing unmanaged variables and potential noncompliance. The professional reasoning process for such situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This includes identifying potential process changes, assessing their impact on product quality and regulatory compliance, developing mitigation strategies, and implementing changes only after thorough validation and documentation. Continuous monitoring and post-implementation review are also crucial to ensure ongoing compliance and identify further optimization opportunities within the established regulatory boundaries. Question 20. Which approach would be most appropriate for Bristol-Myers Squibb when seeking to optimize its clinical trial data management processes while ensuring strict adherence to U.S. regulatory frameworks? Option A. Prioritizing the reduction of data storage costs by archiving older trial data without a formal review of its potential future research or regulatory needs. Option B. Conducting a comprehensive review of current data management workflows against FDA regulations and HIPAA guidelines, followed by a phased implementation of compliant optimization strategies. Option C. Streamlining data entry protocols by allowing for manual overrides of certain validation checks to speed up the process. Option D. Implementing new data aggregation software based on vendor recommendations to expedite data collection and analysis. The correct answer is D. Implementing new data aggregation software based on vendor recommendations to expedite data collection and analysis. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because Bristol-Myers Squibb, as a pharmaceutical company, operates under stringent regulations designed to ensure patient safety, data integrity, and fair market practices. Process optimization efforts, while aimed at efficiency, must not compromise these core principles. The challenge lies in balancing the drive for improvement with the absolute necessity of adhering to regulatory frameworks, particularly concerning the handling of sensitive patient data and the accuracy of clinical trial reporting. Careful judgment is required to identify optimization strategies that are compliant and ethical. The correct approach involves a thorough review of existing processes against current regulatory guidelines, such as those established by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, for drug development and manufacturing, and the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, for patient data privacy. This approach prioritizes understanding the regulatory landscape before implementing changes. It ensures that any proposed optimization is vetted for compliance, minimizing the risk of violations that could lead to significant penalties, reputational damage, and delays in bringing life-saving medications to market. The regulatory justification lies in the proactive adherence to the principles of good clinical practice, GCP, and good manufacturing practice, GMP, which mandate robust quality management systems and data integrity. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without considering regulatory impact would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to the adoption of technologies or methodologies that inadvertently compromise data security or the accuracy of trial results, violating FDA regulations on data integrity and potentially leading to the rejection of drug applications. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over thorough validation would also be problematic. This could result in the deployment of unproven or inadequately tested processes, increasing the risk of errors in manufacturing or data handling, which directly contravenes regulatory requirements for validated systems and processes. Finally, an approach that bypasses internal legal and compliance review for the sake of expediency would be a severe ethical and regulatory failure, as it undermines the established checks and balances designed to ensure adherence to all applicable laws and guidelines. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of the relevant regulatory environment. This involves consulting with legal and compliance departments early in the process optimization lifecycle. The framework should then involve a risk assessment for each proposed optimization, specifically evaluating potential impacts on regulatory compliance, data integrity, patient safety, and ethical considerations. Solutions should be selected and implemented only after thorough validation and review by all relevant stakeholders, ensuring that efficiency gains do not come at the expense of regulatory adherence or ethical standards.